Thank you, President Seligman, Chairman of the Board, Ed Hagem, and Provost Peter Lenny. I'm truly honored to serve this school as its Joan and Martin Bensinger Dean. The Eastman School of Music is a very, very special place, and those of us who are here are especially privileged. I remind all of us who work at Eastman that we're here for one very simple reason, and that is you, the students, period. You students graduating here today are the reason why we're here, so thank you very much. I'll start by saying that I know some of you may be disappointed. You've been here for a good number of years, and you've had occasion to drive down East Avenue to shop for groceries in that cramped little space where we all banged our grocery carts into one another, and on the very day that you graduate, the powers that be decide to open up the brand new spacious Wegmans. Now, I have this theory, being one of those people that goes down there and shops, that after all the fanfare, we will miss that hemmed-in feeling of shopping for vegetables or fruit and banging into one another. You know, that experience we have when you're at the Delta commuter terminal at JFK. It's that real cattle car experience. But the new Wegmans is all the more reason for you to come back and visit us here at Eastman. Now, I know that you're all itching to get out into the world, and for good reason. After years of practice and performances under the tutelage of our faculty, you deserve to be giddy. Talking East Avenue last week, I saw an Eastman student dancing on the sidewalk. Two of our Eastman students were behind her and had these painful looks on their faces, like, why is she embarrassing us in front of the public? She must have just finished her last final exam at Eastman and was ready to bolt. I wanted to stop my car and get out and congratulate her, but the policeman who was behind me was getting ready to pull me over and give me a ticket, so I didn't. But talking tickets, I recall the first time I entered the East End garage back in 2007. And I took my ticket out of the machine, and I remember getting barked at by that lady in the speaker with what I didn't think was a terribly charitable greeting. So what I can say today is that for those of you who are leaving Eastman, who happen to have pushed that little button and gotten your ticket and gotten barked at, this is the last time that you're going to have to hear this. Jules.
Please take the ticket. 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 Please take the ticket.
A thank you to Emirates Vianney for doing that little arrangement. Just so you know, this is what happens when we send an Eastman student to get therapy. Or maybe it's what happens when you send the dean to get therapy. I don't know. But in all seriousness, for a good number of years, the scales have been tipped in favor of your mentors and your teachers. Your own musical impulses, be you an aspiring teacher or composer, scholar or performer, have been shaped by the forces of your education, and that's why you've been here at the Eastman School of Music. Our job has been to help you not just discover and grow your own voice, but to craft it, to enrich it, to inform it. And so now you are independent, and your own independent voice has a chance to step forward and say, enough, this is me. You get to take your own ticket and make something of it. Certainly, this thrilling sense of independence comes with a lot of responsibilities. There are always the practical dimensions. You hear about those over and over. You'll be preoccupied now with the gritty details of piecing together a life that hopefully harmonizes with your musical dreams and your reality. It's the practical question of gainful doing, and I know that you'll do well with some of the leadership skills that you've gained here at Eastman. That's all reasonable. But I'd like also to make an argument for unreason, because I believe that we got into this activity of music by virtue of some unreasonable impulses. Way back in 1605, a wonderful book was authored by a man named Cervantes. This book is filled with humor, it's filled with the absurd and a lurid kind of madness. It's called Don Quixote. It's a simple story. Don Quixote, after having read every available book on knights errant, decides to wander out and become one. In matters of the imagination, Don Quixote is a genius, a mad genius. In matters of reality, not so much. In his quest to act out the life of a noble knight, every physical object he encounters becomes something wild in his imagination. He sees the knight's helmet and what he fashions out of some rusted old armor on a piece of pasteboard. In windmills, he sees legions of the enemy that he's going to fell. In a rather homely village girl, he sees his beautiful queen, Dulcinea del Toboso. Don Quixote does things that only a madman would do. He extends the impractical to the very limits of life or death. But he talks about what he calls the great achievement, which is, quote, to lose one's reason for no reason, end quote. Silly, absurd, comical. But there's a vision of pure abandonment here that has nothing to do with logic at all. To a certain extent, music is an eminently impractical activity. So is writing about it and analyzing it and talking about it and teaching it. It's based on an impulse, a feeling. Frequently impulses and feelings that are not logical. Music is a Don Quixote kind of thing, and in his book, it's as if Don Quixote is saying, I'm releasing myself from the practical, diving into the absurd, relying on my own true voice, my own instincts, and no one else's. In one sense, it's that kind of abandonment that fuels the persistence you will need to succeed. I fear that sometimes we're obsessed with this desire to always consider the practical, the rational, the desire to categorize everything, as if pinning everything down on some Aristotelian logic circuit board is going to get closer to the musical truth. Sometimes it helps. But in music, is this really the way that we feel things, particularly in music? So I'd like to encourage you maybe to look at these musical life questions from a different perspective. In a world that increasingly asks you to measure and quantify everything, to be reasonable in all things, consider from time to time just the opposite, an argument for unreason. I know it's always a question of balance, but now is your time to push the leading limits of your music and your imagination to an extreme. If the push to moderation in your music happens before you've pushed yourself to that mad limit, like our dear friend Mr. Don Quixote, how do you ever know what in fact your true limit is? You're going to end up back at center sometime anyway, but if that center is so close to the Midland safety zone and never leaves, where does that leave you? I urge you to not consider yourself first and foremost a performer or a writer or a composer, but consider yourself first and foremost a teacher. Not necessarily in the sense of teaching as in the profession, but is it not true that people who go to concerts, us, invariably want to learn something? If I sit in a recital and I listen to you perform a Brahms violin sonata, I want to learn. I want to learn new things about the piece. I also want to learn in that performance something about you. I want to hear a voice. I want to hear your voice. And if I can't hear a voice, why should I listen? I don't say this for purely philosophical reasons. There is a growing awareness in the world that we're full of curious, enlivened, lifelong learners who are eager to be taught by you. Your job is to illuminate, to entertain, to inform, to create insight, to inspire, to ignite curiosity, to teach. Here perhaps lies your greatest opportunity. Look at music as a learning experience, and you are at core a teacher. And by the way, for every great teacher I've ever known, they also attract a huge audience. If you don't believe me, then look at the overwhelming popularity of the TED Talks, for example. Looked at in this way, your whole relationship with your music changes. You're not just a performer here to dazzle us with your artistry. You are here to teach. It's like those old tapes of Leonard Bernstein rehearsing the New York Philharmonic, stopping to talk about a passage in the Mahler Third, or Lenny explaining a simple C major chord to a young people's concert audience. We're witnessing one of the great musical rabbis of all time teaching us music, and as well, he performs. I also urge you to become a head turner. You'll hear more than once that the music market is overcrowded with music and musicians. So what's new? It's overcrowded if you consider everybody and everything that's in the game and the general mid-level quality of it all. But how many musical experiences have you had in the last 4 years or 6 years or 8 years that you'd call real head turners? So what is a head turner? You walk into a room full of instrumentalists warming up for some performance. Maybe it's an orchestra, a wind ensemble, an opera. The tuba player is over in the corner setting off depth charges. Trombone players are playing the Ride of the Valkyries. The violinists, violists, cellists, and bassists are noodling, trying to get the center of the registers amidst all the cacophony. The oboe and bassoon players are checking for the 700th time in the last 6 minutes their reeds. For we all know the terrors of an oboist or a bassoonist who's having a bad reed day. You don't want to be around them or their bad reed. What are the clarinet players doing? I don't know what the clarinet players are ever doing. The horn players are obsessing about tone placement because, in all honesty, in the brass arena, they are the most exposed, or so they think they are. The trumpet players are doing these Jimmy Stamp warm-ups, and we still can't understand the meaning of those bent pitches and what relationship they will have on the Tchaikovsky symphony. The flute players are trying to hear themselves warm up in this oppressive din. The percussionists can't warm up because all the stuff that they bang on is out on stage. So they take their snare drum sticks and they do flamadiddles and riffs and drumline fandangos on things like banisters or railings or walls. But then out of somewhere, you don't know what instrument or voice, you hear a stream of sound so unique and so individual and so beguiling that you turn your head. It's powerful and it's unique. You are being taught something at that very moment. But truthfully, how many head turners are there? Not many. Which tells you there's a lot of room in that particular end, but it means striving for a whole different domain. And that's the domain, after you leave here today, to which you must aspire. I also urge you to consider music as the humanities. Why? Because music emanates from a very human place that everyone shares, musicians and non-musicians alike. We have many treasures here at Eastman. Among them, our gifted and committed humanities faculty. They teach courses for our students in languages, economics, history, literature, film, and many other subjects. They aspire to create learning experiences for our Eastman students that connect non-musical subjects directly to the music. But most importantly, they underscore the simple fact that music is a human activity. Everything we do can be traced to some human impulse, some shared human impulse. Music has always been a public art, with some part of it, I guess, held in that private reserve category. But one of my fears is that that private reserve category has gotten larger and larger, and the public stake has gotten smaller and smaller. Maybe because we spend so much time indoors as musicians, we've become very gifted at wrapping up our music into these impressive conceptual packages so that we can put them up on the shelf for adoration by us and our peers. But that's not what Bach wanted. Shakespeare wrote enormously complicated plays, but he wrote them for the public. Bach and Shakespeare both wanted their music to be heard. When music becomes privatized, it loses its tether to the general public. So how can we be surprised when the public turns elsewhere? Toward that end, don't forget the feeling. We in higher education sometimes become cynics of feeling because it's cheap or it's tawdry. But the distinguished historian Jacques Barzun was a man who spent most of his life leaning on the strength of analysis, but he came to the conclusion late in life that the finest works of art were rooted in pure feeling. Feelings are a part of our essence, our earth, our being, as they are of our music. Understand also that our accomplishments and the attention we may gain from these accomplishments come and go like the wind. There will be some splendid times and there will be some profound disappointments. You'll get curves thrown at you that you were convinced were intended for everybody else. In the end, your life will not be about visible accomplishments or duration, but about values, which are invisible and timeless. You can stack up all your accomplishments and put them on display, but the essence of what you are is not visible. There are 1,000 different definitions of what it takes to be a great leader, and you indeed will be great leaders. But if pressed to name that one thing that distinguishes a leader, I'd say it's judgment. It is frankly one of those aspects that both pushes people ahead or truly prevents them constantly from advancing themselves. Judgment is that ability to see things from more than just the personal perspective and to act accordingly, to see situations from an elevation rather than a one-foot level. I am always astonished when I read about our political expectations for elected officials as if it is all about doing what I want or you won't get my vote. Why not vote for someone who maybe won't do exactly what you want, but someone who can act with great judgmental skill, especially in what I know to be far more complicated situations than I or the soundbite-minded, far too quick to judgment press believes that it is. This moment, this commencement, is about, finally, emancipation. But it is also about the hard, hard work given each day with full consciousness of your knowledge, your spirit, and your will, and with untold extremes of generosity. Become that artist-teacher from whom we are all eager to learn. Be proud to call yourself an artist, a poet, for that is in fact the origin of the word music, from the muse, one who has the powers and the characteristics of a poet. You are a member of one of the noblest professions on the face of the earth, eminently impractical perhaps, but untouchable because it manifests itself in the form of sounds strung together with heart and with mind and with spirit. You are, in the broadest sense of the word, a musician, deepened with sensitivity when you dig the depths of experience and you find your voice. The great poet Seamus Heaney, in a wonderful essay that he wrote called Feeling into Words, said, and I quote, "I think that the discovery of a way of writing that is natural and adequate to your sensibility depends on the recovery of that essential quick, the absolute register to which your proper music must be tuned. It's tuning your expectations to your nature. That's when you find your voice." With that, I close. Allow your work to become on occasion unreasonable for no reason at all and with great abandon. Consider yourself a teacher with every utterance or musical phrase or turn of the pen or lesson that you deliver. And in turn, consider yourself a student forever, not just a student of music, but first as a student of life. Art that only arises from the practice room cannot make an argument for being human because it is not informed by human interaction, human friction, joy, exhilaration, and yes, disappointment. Become a refined artist by being an artist of informed feeling. Be true to yourself. If you don't, you'll end up going through life living on a set of principles that aren't your own. Root your music and your scholarship and your teaching in the full spectrum of what we are as human beings. Not just the conceptual, but the all of it. Yes, we want you to be balanced, but this balance must be full-throttled and expanded to the limits. This is what we call empowering the Eastman advantage. Thank you for allowing us to share this part of your life with you. We will be honored to hear and see what you do once you leave Eastman. So write us often, and by all means, come visit us often. Today, you get your diploma, your ticket to the next chapter in your voyage. The scales are now tipped in your favor. So please, take the ticket. Thank you.
A production of the University of Rochester. Please visit us online and subscribe to our channel for more videos.